Hola chicos, aquí estoy yo, tu profe de español, Kate. Ahora vamos a aprender la diferencia de los verbos de ser y estar. Ser and estar are some of the first verbs that we learn in Spanish as we start to describe the world around us. Por ejemplo, yo soy inteligente. Tú eres mi amigo. Or, with estar, estoy bien. Estamos cansados. Or, la pluma está encima de la mesa. So why is there so much confusion? Well, don't be worried. It's totally normal to be confused with ser and estar, and it's a common mistake that many people make. And we're going to talk about these two verbs today and hopefully help you understand the differences and the different contexts that we use them. In English, we only have one verb to say to be. Well, and that verb is to be. It conjugated as is or are. In Spanish, there are two verbs to mean is or are. So these verbs, both of these, would be ser and estar. Both of these verbs mean to be, and they're translated as is or are, or if the yo form, it's I am. Ser and estar have specific contexts of use. So they have specific times that we use either ser or estar, and then they can also change the meaning of a sentence based on which verb you choose to use. So sometimes you can use the ser in one sentence and in the same sentence use estar, and it changes the meaning of what you're trying to say. So that can definitely be a problem, but we will work through it today. So today in our lesson, we are going to review the conjugations of ser and estar. We will also review when we should use ser and estar, so the different contexts that we should look at them in. We'll talk about their basic differences, so when I should use one versus maybe when I should use the other. We'll also talk about the words that can be used with both of them and the words that will change meanings based on which verb you choose. We'll definitely do lots of practice, so you can practice choosing between ser and estar, and you can also practice and make sure you have your conjugations down for each of them. Okay, and finally, we'll add a little footnote if we have time around linguistics. So just some interesting facts about ser and estar as Spanish and English come into contact here in the U.S. So let's get started. Vamos. Okay, so first, vamos a completar las siguientes oraciones. Let's do this quick review of both ser and estar. So on this side, you're going to use only ser, and on this side, you're going to only use estar. Can you pause the video now and take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete this short activity, completing the blank with the form of ser or estar that's appropriate? Okay, excelente. Vamos a repasar. Número 1, yo soy pelirroja y alta. Número 2, mi amigo es muy interesante. Número 3, los chicos son de Argentina. Número 4, mi amigo y yo somos muy similares. Tú y tus amigos, aquí hay dos respuestas. Puedes poner son. Or, si estás en España, if you're in Spain, you could also say sois para vosotros. Ok, y último, número 6, ¿de dónde eres tú? Y ahora repasamos estar. Número 1, yo estoy muy cansada hoy. Ahora nosotros estamos en Bolivia de vacaciones. Número 3, mis amigos están en clase ahora. Don't forget your accent. ¿Dónde estás tú? Again, accent. Yo estoy bien. Ok, y el último, ¿dónde está la oficina? It was already there. Okay, I'm going to ask that if you've got at least 3 wrong from this section, so if you got like an 8 out of 11, I think there's 11, if you could continue on and watch the video from here. So you're going to go on to a review of the conjugations of ser and estar, so you'll learn just reviewing the conjugations of them before you go on to choose whether you need to pick ser or estar, which is a little bit harder. So if you have 8 out of 11 or lower, so if you have an 8 or lower on the score, if you could continue on the video watching now. If not, you can skip ahead to the section that is choosing between ser and estar. Muy bien. Ok, ahora vamos a repasar el verbo ser, que claro, es uno de los verbos que significa en inglés to be. Okay, this one we see normally in sentences such as yo soy inteligente or yo soy, and then you would say your name, so Kate or Kate. Okay, and we'll go into more of the differences later on. Okay, so vamos a repasar los verbos que tenemos aquí. So, tenemos yo soy. Repita, yo soy. Tú eres. Él es. Ella es. Y usted, you formal, es. Tenemos aquí nosotros o nosotras, if you're in a group of all girls. Nosotros somos. Vosotros, si estás en España, sois. You all are. Y finalmente tenemos ellos o ellas o ustedes, which can be you all, formal or informal in other countries. So formal in Spain, informal in the US. Or formal as well, son. I don't know why I went into that diatribe. You can check out my video about the subject pronouns, but the verb is son. Ok, ahora vamos a repasar con el verbo estar. So estar es el otro verbo que significa to be. In English, of course, we're going to be talking about the differences a little bit later on. So let's just review our conjugations. Estar, though, is the verb that you're going to see when you say something like yo estoy bien. Or el teléfono está en la mesa. Okay, so just so that you recognize where you might see this verb. Okay, ahora vamos a repasar el verbo de estar. So, when we have our subject yo, el verbo, the conjugation will be estoy. ¿Ok? Y si tienes el sujeto tú, you, el verbo es estás. It's super important that you remember the accent. It's like another whole, spelling issue, and also it's another whole word if you leave it without the accent. Ok, tenemos él, ella y usted está. Acento. Ok, nosotros o nosotras estamos, sin acento, no accent. Estamos. Vosotros estáis. Si estás en España, estáis. Y finalmente tenemos ellos, ellas, ustedes están. Muy bien, vamos a practicar un poquito más con estos verbos. Okay, so si para ser, if I want to figure out what is tú, what would ser be for tú? Pause the video here to think about it if you need to as well. Muy bien. Es tú, eres. Okay, if I have a subject like ella y yo for ser, what would my verb be? Muy bien. Tenemos el verbo somos. Y una vez más, si tengo ellos, my verb for ser would be what? Go ahead and pause the video to think about your answer. Muy bien, el verbo es son. Excelente. Ahora vamos a practicar con el verbo estar. Ok, muy bien. So si tengo el verbo estar, and my subject here is yo, how would I conjugate the verb estar? Muy bien. Tenemos yo estoy. Si tengo el sujeto tú y ella, what would the verb or the form of estar be? Muy bien. It would be either están, or you could also say estáis. Remember, oops, not over the I, over the A. Okay, remember that tú y ella would be like saying you and her, so you all. So here I could use either ustedes, if I'm in Mexico, the US, or in a South American country, or I could think of it as vosotros, and you all in Spain, and that's why it would be estáis. Muy bien, and one more to try. If my subject were Ana, what would my verb be? Excelente. We would have está. Ana está or ella está. Excelente, estudiantes. Now, I would like you to, if you feel comfortable with this, go ahead and rewind back to the beginning and try that mini quiz that you took at the beginning of this lesson again, and make sure you pass with an 8 out of 11 or higher to move on to the differences between ser and estar. Excelente. Ok, muy bien. Ahora vamos a aprender las diferencias entre ser y estar. So remember that this is a basic level 1 kind of lesson talking about the differences between ser and estar. This is something that you are not going to really truly master until you've really lived in another country and are using sort of the two languages or the two verbs there. But this is just sort of a basic beginning to it. If you want a more advanced, in-depth version, you can look at one of my more advanced class lessons on ser and estar. Okay, muy bien. So vamos a empezar. Let's get started. So let's look at some examples here. Let's look at, we'll not start with the first one. Let's start with this one. Ella es bonita versus estás muy bonita ahora. So aquí vemos ella es, okay, bonita. And bonita significa pretty or beautiful. So she is pretty. And then if we look at the second example, estás muy bonita. And while it's not necessary to say the ahora, I've put it here so you can start to see the difference between es bonita versus estás muy bonita. Okay, so you are very pretty right now. So there's one example that what might you think about the use of ser and estar right there? Think about your answer. So why might I use es bonita versus estás muy bonita ahora? Muy bien. So in the first case, ella es bonita would be something that is true all the time. So it's defining who she is. Estás muy bonita ahora is sort of conditional. So this is based on a condition. Maybe she's not always dressed up or not always, wearing her, best clothes or whatever all the time, but at this time she is. So, estás muy bonita ahora. So we would use the verb estar here to describe her condition at the moment, maybe not all the time. Okay, let's look at another example here. So, soy de Chile or estoy en Nueva York de viaje. So in this example, we know that we use the verb ser to describe where someone is from, so their origin. So when I say soy de Chile, I'm saying I'm from Chile, soy de Chile. But then if I look at the other example, I'm still talking about a place, so Nueva York, New York. But here I have, and even if I didn't have the words de viaje, okay, I would still know that estoy en Nueva York is different from where I'm from. Estoy here is where I am at the moment. So I am in New York versus I am from Chile. So here we have an example that this shows origin and this would show location. Okay. Okay, let's look at now this example here. Soy nerviosa versus estoy nerviosa para el examen. Okay, en este caso, we see soy nerviosa. Okay, I know that I use ser to describe characteristics about myself or about others. So if I say something like soy nerviosa, I'm saying that I'm a nervous person or maybe like I'm an anxious person in general. Now, if I look at the second example, estoy nerviosa para el examen, I see that I have an exam coming up. And estoy nerviosa, I'm nervous for the exam. So this here is not my general state of being. I'm not a nervous person. I'm just nervous at this moment for this exam. And let's just take one more look at one more example here. So, la clase es aburrida versus estoy aburrido en la clase. Here we have, I'm one describing the class. So, la clase is, and aburrido o aburrida significa boring. So here I have the class is boring. Okay, so here I'm describing the class. It's a description of the class that I'm in. La clase es aburrida. Hopefully this one isn't. Okay, and now I look at estoy aburrido en la clase. Here I'm still in my class, but now I'm saying I am bored in the class. I'm not saying I am a boring person. If that were the case, I would say soy aburrida. And I really hope I'm not. So, soy aburrida versus estoy aburrido or aburrida en la clase. I am bored versus I am boring. Okay, so now that we've sort of seen some examples of the differences between ser and estar, we're going to go over them more explicitly. But what you might want to do is just draw kind of like a little chart for yourself, ser, estar, and if you could take a moment and write down, using these examples, what are some of the reasons that we're using ser and what are some of the reasons that we're using estar? Okay, so if we looked at this first example right here, we used it to, one, describe. Okay, but over here, too, we also used estar to describe. Okay, we'll come back to different times that we might describe them. Okay, for this one right here, we used ser to describe origin, like where a person is from, and we used estar to describe location, where they are now. Okay, can you take a look at some of the examples and just think about the verbs ser and estar and when you might use them for one versus the other, and then we're going to talk about these more explicitly on the next slide. Okay, you might have a chart that looks something like this. We're going to go over this a little bit more explicitly right now, and I'll give you some examples of each. So with ser, we use it to describe physical or character. So in that example, when we said ella es bonita, we were describing her physical nature, right? So it was a description of what her physical appearance was, okay? I can also use ser in the example, for example, la clase on that previous page. La clase es aburrida because I'm describing the character or the nature of the class. In the same way, I can say something like yo soy inteligente because inteligente describes myself or my character. Basically, a good way to think of this is anytime that you want to identify someone or something as a certain thing, you're going to use the verb ser. So if I want to identify as a certain race, for example, yo soy, or ethnicity, yo soy mexicana. Okay, so here I use ser to identify myself as that. Okay, we also use ser to describe our professions or occupations that we are the majority of the time. So not something that we maybe do on the side or that we are, right now because we can't find a job. It's what our occupation, like how we, again, identify ourselves. That's the key word here, how we identify ourselves. So if I want to say, yo soy una profesora, I use the verb ser. Again, I'm also using ser to describe personality, so our character, describing personality or character. So, ella es simpática. Whenever I want to identify who or what I'm talking about, so she is, I'm identifying her as a nice person, then I'm going to use ser. Okay, again, we use ser to also describe origin. So again, identifying where we're from. So yo soy de Panama would be identifying where I'm from. I use the construction ser plus de to say where I'm from. Okay, I'm going to use ser to describe nationality, race, or gender, such as yo soy mujer, or yo soy americana. Again, these are nationality, race, or gender, but it's also identifying myself as something, or someone as something, or something as something. Okay, I'm also going to use ser whenever I decide to talk about times, dates, seasons, events, concerts, or parties, like where they might occur or where they might be. Okay, so for example, when I talk about time, I say son las 8 de la tarde or etc. But I'm going to always use ser. I would never use estar. If I ask you the question, ¿cuál es la fecha? Of course, I'm asking it using the verb ser. ¿Cuál es la fecha? To ask the date. And I use the verb ser to ask that question. Of course, if I say the date, es el 1 de febrero, I'm going to use es when I give the answer there, most of the time. There will be some times where you might say something like, estamos a, we're at right now, el 1 de febrero, but we're not going to get into that today. Okay, I'm also going to use it in when I'm talking about events or where something might take place. You can think about ser here, and when you're talking about events, as where is it in Spanish where you can use the word celebrar? ¿Dónde se celebra el evento? I ask you, ¿dónde se celebra el cumpleaños? Se puede decir, es en mi casa. A lot of us want to say, está en mi casa. And you could say it. People aren't going to, I say it sometimes too, but just if you're talking about a place where something would happen, an event, where would it be celebrated? Where is it going to be celebrated? Okay, you're going to use the verb es because you're identifying, again, which party it is. So which birthday it is, it's the one, and it's at my house. Es en mi casa. Okay, also, when we talk about relationships, so if we want to say es mi hermano, that's my brother, okay, or he's my brother. then we would use es. We would use the verb ser. Okay, we can think of this once again as identifying who he is. Who is he? Oh, es mi hermano. And finally, we can use it to say what things are made of, so identifying what it might be made of. So I could say, la casa is of madera, wood. So it's a wooden house, okay? There is a phrase, however, that might say, está hecho de or hecha de. In that case, you would use estar, but this is a specific phrase. It's made of. And then you would put the thing it's made of there. But for the most part, we're going to use ser to describe what things are made of. Okay, so for the most part, we're going to use ser always when we want to identify or we want to define which thing that we're talking about. Okay, I also like to use, and I know some other teachers use the device doctor for describe, D, O, occupation, C, character, T for time, O for origin, or R for relationship. Okay, that works as a very basic understanding of ser, but there are little, things that don't work always with those things. So you want to think about, does it describe or does it identify or does it define the thing that you're talking about? Okay, and then to talk about the verb estar, we use estar to talk about the location of a person or a thing. So está en mi casa. Okay, not an event like we did with ser, so where does an event occur, but where is he? So él está en mi casa, his current location. Okay, we would also use it to describe emotions, feelings, or moods, conditions that might change. Okay, so ahora estoy feliz, pero mañana estoy mal. Okay, we might also use it to describe conditions of people, places, or things. So like our state of being, or in Spanish we would use el estado, the state of the thing that we're talking about. So for example, if something's broken, está roto, it's broken, that's its condition. Or if it's dirty, está sucio, or está limpio, if it's clean. Okay, so those are states of being. So states of being of people, places, or things. We also use it to describe the civil state of people, so married, single, divorced. So we would say, ella está casada, or ella está divorciada. And now I've heard people say divorciada, perdón. I've heard people say both with es or está, so using ser or estar. So just know that is kind of going under a linguistic change, but está cansada, está divorciada, está muerta if you're dead or alive, está muerta or muerto, y está vivo if you're alive. This one I only hear with estar, but I have heard people say es casada versus está casada. So, and then finally we use the verb estar to describe action. So the action, we use it with the present progressive tense, which is like I am dancing. So estoy bailando, like the Enrique Iglesias song. So estoy bailando. This is the present progressive tense. You can see my video on that located on my website, but just know that we use only estar describing the action that's like currently taking place right now. Okay, and then finally, so just like we had a little device to remember ser, something to just remember about estar is that it really just refers to conditions or the state of being, so el estado, okay? And some teachers will use this acronym, place, which would refer to position, which is not on my list, but position, like its posture. Basically, it's physical posture. It's like kind of its state of being. So is it sitting up? Is it standing up? That's a little bit more advanced than what we're doing today, but just know that does apply. But typically also the location Okay, action, so using this present progressive tense, what you're doing right now. Okay, the condition, again, so the conditions of something, and then finally the emotion, so your emotion or feeling. Okay, so then just to review, we are going to use the verb ser, and I just like to remember, make it more easy. So we use ser to identify or to define. So we want to say it is something, or that's the one I'm talking about. We're identifying or defining it. Versus with estar, we're using estar specifically when we want to talk about the condition or the state of being. So we would call that estado in Spanish. Or how it kind of how something might find itself in that moment. In Spanish, we use the phrase "cómo se encuentra." So how do I find it, or how is it found in that moment? So maybe not all the time, pero ¿cómo se encuentra ahora? Okay, for example, me encuentro triste. I'm sad. I find myself to be sad right now, so therefore we would use estoy triste. So if you want to remember the two mnemonic devices, which are really great things, especially when you're starting to look at ser and estar, again, you want to remember doctor, and then you want to remember the word place. Okay, doctor for description. O for occupation, so someone's job or how they might define themselves, such as like a student. Yo soy estudiante. Okay, C for character. Couldn't remember there for a minute. So their character, describing their character or personality. T for anything that really has to do with time. O for origin, where someone is from. And R for the relationship. So, es mi hermano, es mi mamá. With estar, we use for position, so the position of something, the location of something, where it is in that moment. We use it for action, what is it doing now? So, estoy practicando español. Okay, C, what was C for? P-A-C, condition. Okay, so that main word, so just its condition in that moment, not what it is all the time. And then when I'm describing my emotions or my feelings, something that is also a condition that can essentially change. So you can choose to remember ser as, you can remember this little device here, doctor and place. Or again, what really helps me is just, am I identifying it or defining it? Or am I just talking about its current condition or its state of being right now? And then that should help you remember, as a beginning place, the differences between ser and estar. Okay, so if I look at my examples that I had pulled up before to kind of introduce you to you, we're going to take a look at these now and see if we can figure out which, why it uses ser and why it uses estar. So let's take a look at la fruta es verde versus la fruta está verde. So I think about la fruta es verde. I'm using es here because it's describing. It describes the color of the fruit. So I'm identifying the fruit as green, okay, or defining it or describing its physical character. Now, when I look at está verde, okay, this one actually kind of translates to it's, unripe, because if it's fruit is green, it's not ripe normally. I think so. So it's unripe. So la fruta está verde. So this here would describe its condition. So in the first one, I'm identifying the fruit as being green. I'm defining it as green. And then in the second one, I'm talking about its current condition right now or its state of being. Okay, for the second example, I have yo soy guapa y ella está guapa esta noche. So yo soy guapa would be me defining, so either defining or describing my physical characteristic. Okay, and ella está guapa, if I think about my device for estar, place. Okay, P for position, L for location, A for action, C for condition, or E for emotion. I see that it kind of fits her condition because I'm saying esta noche, tonight, maybe not all the time, pero está muy guapa esta noche. She maybe put on makeup, she got dressed and is ready to go. I don't know why I'm calling out all the women like this, but just so está muy guapa esta noche, but maybe she's not all the time. Or maybe it's not noticeable all the time. Okay, we'll skip to this one since the previous example is just like that, the previous one we did. Okay, so son las 2 de la tarde, es el mes de febrero. Here I see that I'm talking about time. So if I think about doctor, description, occupation, character, time, origin, relationship. Okay, so I know that this one here relates to time. So I'm using it to describe time. So I would use ser. Okay, can you take a moment and practice with these ones? And again, tell me why I'm using ser and why I'm using estar. So just putting the letter of the mnemonic device or actually writing it out just like I did on the left-hand side. Can you do that now? Go ahead and pause the video and then I will share the answers with you when we come back. Okay, excelente. So if we look at the first one, la clase es aburrida. Here I'm describing or defining the class as boring. So it's a description of the class. So that's why we use the verb ser. Okay, estoy aburrido en la clase. Okay, here I'm talking about my emotion or my feeling. So the last one of place. Okay, in the class. I'm bored. I'm not boring, I'm bored. Okay, if I look at soy nerviosa here, I'm again describing what type of person I am, anxious or nervous. Whereas in this one, estoy nerviosa para el examen, I'm only nervous because of the exam. I'm maybe not nervous all the time. So here, this could either describe my emotions or my feelings, or you could have also had condition, my condition at this moment. Okay, if I look at the next one, soy de Chile, I see that this is origin because I'm saying this is where I'm from. And if I look at estoy en Nueva York de viaje, on vacation, this would be my location. So I'm using estar and then ser. And then the last one, estoy bailando. This is describing the action that I'm doing right now. Keyword ahora, right now. Estoy bailando, I am dancing. Ok, excelente. So, vamos a practicar en la próxima carta, así que pasamos a la próxima carta ahora para practicar. Ok, excelente. Ahora vamos a practicar con este mini prueba y dice completa las siguientes oraciones con ser o estar. So pause the video here and try choosing between ser and estar. Remember that you do need to conjugate it correctly, so don't forget about conjugation like we did at the beginning. Okay, muy bien. So pause the video here and I'll be back to walk you through the answers. Okay, excelente. Vamos a poner las respuestas, put the answers, and then I'm going to explain each one and why. So, número 1, yo soy médico. Ellos están cansados. It is wrong without an accent. Nosotros somos hermanos. Mi padre es de Chile. Ahora mi familia está en Nueva York. Y los chicos están cantando. Okay, the first one, yo soy médico. Médico es a doctor, so it's an occupation. So it's, again, I'm defining myself or identifying myself. Can't spell identify. Identify. Spanish and English confuses me sometimes. Okay, identify myself. Okay, ellos están cansados. Cansados significa tired. So this one would describe my state of being or how I'm feeling. So emotion or feeling or your condition for it. So using the verb estar. Nosotros somos hermanos, brothers. Here we have a relationship. So this would be using the verb ser. Mi padre es de Chile. Again, we have the de, which is super important, the preposition from Chile. So aquí tenemos origin. Okay, so it would be O for origin, so we use estar, ser. Ahora mi familia está en Nueva York. Again, this preposition is really key. En Nueva York. So está en Nueva York. Mi familia está. So we'd use it. So it's our location currently. And the subject is mi familia. Okay, now some people might say mi familia estamos or están. Okay, technically mi familia is just one thing. So it's la familia. So it'd be like it is in Nueva York. But some people might say mi familia estamos en Nueva York. Mi familia están en Nueva York. But esta would be the correct answer there. Los chicos están cantando. Here we have an action. So it's the action that's actually taking place. So we would use estar for the action taking place. Okay, excelente. Esto es todo. Y if you want a follow-up video on words that can be used with either ser or estar that change meaning, please check out that next video, as well as my video on the linguistic changes of both ser and estar. Muy bien, gracias. Besos de Kate. Chao.